Notre Dame joining the Big 12 would close the gap between this conference, the Big 10, and the SEC. And I don't think it's that far out of the question. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. Your second listen is probably to that guy, Spencer McLaughlin of Locked On College
Yeah, even
Football.
though you promote a different show down in the corner, yeah, it should be your second listen of the day.
Someone's not a Craig Sheeman fan. Okay. Thanks for making his show your second listen. Everyone's favorite Locked On host, Spencer McLaughlin, here to talk Notre Dame and the Big 12, making a good league pairing for the Irish because, let's face it, revenue-wise, the future of the college football playoff, Notre Dame might need to find a home. And then in the middle segment, I don't know if Notre Dame would ever actually do this. I'm going to give Spencer a chance to play the entire Notre Dame Marcus Freeman card and get to play Irish for 8 minutes. And the Big 12, I think we've proven, from the Big 12 with TNT to Notre Dame with NBC, ESPN doesn't have to be the end-all, be-all in college football moving forward. If you hit subscribe, we get to keep our jobs. No, that would be fun. Spencer, Notre Dame, the Big 12. Why would this make sense for the Big 12 conference? Why would this be a move the Big 12 and Brett Yormark should pursue?
Well, I mean, it would be a financial home run, though that feels underselling it. This would be Freddie Freeman walk-off grand slam to recreate the Kirk Gibson call for Joe Davis. This would be such a home run of a move. It would be so iconically fantastic. It's exactly why it can't happen, of course, but the idea that Notre Dame is wanted or would be wanted by the Big 12 would be plain and obvious to anyone who understands how college football works and how the money works. Notre Dame is an incredibly valuable commodity. One thing that, amidst the realignment discussions that we've had over the last several years, Drake, is it's usually in the camp of schools seeking a conference that values them. There are only so many schools that are coveted by conferences. Notre Dame falls into that elite group. You know, USC and UCLA were coveted by the Big Ten. Oregon and Washington were kind of afterthoughts there, right? They got added after the fact for a half share. They weren't the top priority. USC and UCLA, they were wanted. Texas and Oklahoma were wanted by the SEC. All the other moves that we have seen, Colorado was wanted by the Big 12, but it's usually been a case of, hey, do you want us? Not we want you. As in the schools going to a conference, Stanford, Cal, SMU going to the ACC saying, do you want us? Can we come to you? Not the conference saying we need to go and get them. It would give the Big 12 a flagship television product. It would give them a huge brand. There is absolutely no fit, but guess what? It would be the greatest move you could possibly pull off. Even better than outmaneuvering the Pac-12's leadership, which in hindsight probably wasn't very difficult. This would be even better than that if somehow Brett Yormark pulls the biggest rabbit out of the biggest hat that you could find.
Yeah, 1 foot down, the SB Nation outlet for Notre Dame says that schools like Oklahoma State, TCU, West Virginia have some cachet, and Notre Dame has never played Texas Tech or Kansas State, but they'd be fun opponents to see and a fun schedule to string together. That's the first point they make in a case to join the Big 12, but the stronger argument they put together is, in joining the Big 12, this is a direct quote, the Irish will join a conference freshly bereft of complete anarchy and could quickly step into a big dog role, a relatively soft schedule in most years that would create an easier path to playoff. And unlike independence in this path, you would give the Irish the ability to ride the soft schedule.
They just lost to Northern Illinois and got to the playoff with a home playoff game. I don't think playoff access is going to be a strong selling point for why Notre Dame would need to join the Big 12.
And the end of the quote, it would give you a path to a first round bye. If you're looking at the Irish,
that went so well for everybody this year. That's something they're dying to have.
To join a conference, and you want them to quickly emerge as a conference power, it's the fastest way to do it.
I bet every athletic director, particularly Notre Dame's, looked at that environment in South Bend against Indiana and the revenue that came with it and said, gosh, I would love to get rid of this. This blows, man.
Yes, no more on-campus playoff playoff games for the first round by Notre Dame. Is that a cocky thing to assume, though, that Notre Dame would walk into the Big 12 and immediately be the football powerhouse that becomes an Oklahoma? Because OU for that 10-year stretch was perennially in the playoff dominating the Big 12.
Well, I mean, they would certainly step in, be a conference contender right away. I don't think they would step in and just win it every single year.
Similar to how Utah is going to step in and win it every year.
I have a hard, it turns out if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have much of a football team, but that's a different conversation for another day. But would they slide in and just win 4 out of 5 Big 12 titles? No. Would they slide in and win 0 out of 5? Also no. They would win at least a couple in a 5-year stretch. I don't think they'd win all of them. I mean, I watched them lose to Northern Illinois, so don't tell me that the teams in the Big 12 can't be. And they did that in South Bend. So don't tell me that the teams in the Big 12 wouldn't be able to put a team on the field. I mean, if we want to go ultimate college football transitive property, and I believe hypotheticals are how the cool kids do it in this wonderful sport, Drake.
The rich kids, not the cool kids, the rich kids.
Yes, those two. And, aren't those one and the same? Okay, that was mean. But Texas plays a game that they should have lost to Arizona State. Texas plays close with Ohio State. Ohio State is going to beat Notre Dame in the national championship game. So, somewhere in there, if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C and whatnot. Yeah, Arizona State could have played with Notre Dame. I absolutely believe that. But I mean, from a football standpoint, I think we've seen it's hard to go into a new conference and just dominate right away. I mean, Oregon went into the Big Ten and won, and then played the Buckeyes in the Rose Bowl, and that didn't go very well for them. So it's always harder than you think. I mean, we're seeing this with. We've seen the quote from Mick Cronin, UCLA's basketball coach, who is suddenly realizing that travel in the Big Ten is hard. And if you're in Los Angeles playing a Big Ten schedule, he said, we've seen the Statue of Liberty twice in the last 3 weeks. I was like, whoa. Yeah. Who could have seen that coming, that it would be a challenge? But this is what everybody wanted to do. So, yeah, I mean, it would always be harder than I think it looks on paper. That much has become very clear. But would they be able to come and be at a high level right away? Yeah, of course.
He also said that they've seen the Eiffel Tower twice in the last 3 weeks. It's a really good slip on the front end of his quote.
Wait, did he say the Eiffel Tower?
He did. He's like, we've seen the Eiffel Tower. The Statue of Liberty. He's like, one of those. He's been traveling so much, he's jet lagged.
We went to the University of Paris, or was it UNLV? I don't know. Those Eiffel Towers look the same.
Spencer, before we talk how Notre Dame would probably never give this the time of day, for the Big 12, if this is a move down the road that you could somehow convince the Notre Dame athletic department to consider, does it close the gap? Does it close the gap in an extreme way when it comes to the Big 12, the SEC, the Big 10?
In what respect?
In the respect of, okay, now the Big 12 can be considered, because we say Power 2 a lot. The national media wants to conjure a Power 2. Is there now a Power 3?
I don't know that they want to conjure it so much as it just kind of exists. It's just not as big of a gap as everybody wants it to be. I think it closes the gap. I wouldn't say there's a... I actually hadn't thought about that before you asked me, if you can't tell already by how fluidly this response is going from my brain out my vocal cords here. I think it would definitely solidify the Big 12 as being above the ACC, which is certainly what they were this year. I mean, look at the way bowl season went. It was a mess for the ACC, and I don't think that the conference was undeserving of having 2 teams into the playoff, whereas the Big 12 only had 1. I do think that if... you ask me which conference I think is stronger top to bottom, I take the Big 12, and I think this would be another step in that direction, but it still doesn't put you in the Big 10 or SEC's footing. It doesn't put you in that same realm, because you have to have 3 to 5 programs that, when you're having a great season, go to the national championship game, or at least the national semifinal. That's what you have in the Big 10 and SEC. Notre Dame would be another program. I don't know that the same depth at the top would be there just because you add 1 team. If you added 3 Notre Dames, then you would have something. But I don't think right now you could say that would happen.
And I don't think that the 3 Notre Dames of the ACC, Clemson, Florida State, and Miami, are equivalent to Notre Dame, but those 3 are the anchor that keeps the conference where it is. So yes, I would concur. You need a couple of, you can't just have 1 shining star. Otherwise, it doesn't really make sense for that shining star. And for you, it's like, okay, well, that's our guy. Hope he wins coming up. Notre Dame wouldn't entertain this, but they also seemingly wouldn't entertain the Big 10 or the SEC or anybody. Is that the case on Locked On Big 12? Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is where I've gone this NFL postseason to make money. Over 10 million members, billions in winnings. Prize Picks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoffs or regular season, they make it easy to win big while enjoying all the football action. During the playoffs, you pick more or less on at least two players. If your picks hit, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. That's right, 1,000 times your cash, just with a few simple picks. For me, I like the hot takes. Jaden Daniels going 250 passing yards. Travis Kelce, 70 or more receiving yards. Parlay those together. If they hit, that's money in your pocket. With Prize Picks Flex Play, you can still double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Sometimes with the app, you get your winnings in as little as 15 minutes. Run your game this football season. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, just $50. That's $50 just for playing. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with Prize Picks. Prize Picks, run your game. Spencer, why will Notre Dame, whether it's the Big 12 or the Big 10, not join a conference?
They don't have to. They're special. They're unique. They're the golden child with those golden helmets, which I do admit are beautiful on television. I mean, just like shockingly good. One of the most underrated uniform aspects in the entire country.
I was on a date recently, and the Notre Dame game was on. And
wow, okay, like, nice flex. Like, yeah, just rub it in my face. Why not?
She's like, continue. Wow, I love those helmets. Maybe they are
I
cool.
see. Okay, you're joking. You're not actually on a date. That makes way more sense. So if Notre Dame were to join a conference, there's quite literally, with the way the playoff is currently constructed and how ingrained the brand of Notre Dame football is, there is no significant upside for Notre Dame to join a conference.
Well, let's say Notre Dame misses the college football playoff for 5 years. They're losing a large sum of income that comes from the playoff committee.
Right, but they have made the playoff, and they get to keep that share that usually gets divvied up amongst a conference all for themselves. That is a significant, just by making it this year, you could still be in a better place financially than teams that make the playoff for the next 3 years because they made it 1 year. So finances, I don't think are Notre Dame's concern. They want to win a national championship. They have a chance to do that. Again, I don't believe they're going to because Ohio State is really good, but Marcus Freeman has proven that they can get to that particular level. So if that's the case, if you don't need to play a neutral site playoff game, it'll be a home or a road game, maybe in another year where their schedule's a little bit tougher and they go 10-2, maybe they're the 8 seed and they play, a road game or something like that. Like however it all shakes out, the incentive for them to join the conference to play an extra game just to try to get a bye isn't really there. I mean, you'd have to consider what's the financial reward for joining a conference compared to the financial deficit you come at by removing several home playoff games over a 10-year span. What's the calculation? How much money do they bring in, television and ticket revenue and everything like that with the home playoff game? I imagine it's several $1 million. What if they do that every year? Which, if Marcus Freeman continues at this level and wins 10, 11, 12 games a season, gets to the playoff and has a home playoff game, gets the benefit of the doubt, even though their schedule was, fairly weak for the most part this year. If they keep getting that, I don't see why they would change that. I think they'd look at it and go, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So that's the first thing on joining a conference, period. And then the second thing is if they were to join a conference, why would they go to the one that is clearly third at best? Now, I believe it's third, but I'm saying at best because you'd have people that would argue the ACC, and we still don't really know what's happening with Florida State and Clemson trying to...
Oh, don't worry. We'll talk about that in the offseason.
So I bet we will. I bet we will. We can get back to all that fun stuff. But the situation between the Big 12 and the ACC is certainly more fluid. Now, whichever conference you would go to there would solidify it as third with the brand that you bring to the table, but also the strength of a conference is not purely measured on television dollars and revenue. And when we've all tried to argue that the SEC correctly is not what it used to be, or at least it wasn't this past season. How have we argued that? Based on lower television numbers and fewer dollars and lower attendance number? No, based on the quality of football that's on the field. I mean, next year the ACC might be better than the Big 12. I don't really see that being the case right now. I'm just saying that can change on a year-to-year basis. But what can't change on a year-to-year basis is the Big 10 and the SEC are above the other two. There's more cachet, there are bigger brands, more television opportunities, more high-level games. Like there are just way more appealing elements to going to one of those leagues. to make it worthwhile, or there are too many appealing elements to go to one of those leagues to make it worthwhile to consider, what if we go be a big fish in a smaller pond?
If I had a nickel for every time the word cachet has been used in the history of Locked On Big 12, I'd have 2 nickels. Not a lot. Weird that it happened twice in the same show. Spencer, the same SB Nation outlet, One Foot Down, that covers Notre Dame, writes another article explaining why Notre Dame should join not just a conference, but the conference being the Big Ten, saying a familiarity with the schedule, a Washington or an Oregon or a USC or UCLA, and those Pac-12 schools they've messed with, and then an Ohio State or a Michigan. Some of these really cool, more regional rivalries Notre Dame can pick up annually as a part of a conference slate. But it also says it's a good way to balance Notre Dame's need to secure its competitive future in a changed college football landscape with the desire we have as fans to preserve as much as we can of what has made this sport so fun. Do you agree that in joining a conference, Notre Dame can secure its competitive future?
Well, yes, I agree. They would do that if they joined the Big Ten. I do not agree that that's the only way they can secure their financial and competitive future, because they already have it secured. They get their own television deal just as a university. They're the biggest independent. Everybody knows they get the sort of ingrained respect that, say, a BYU did not get this year by receiving little to no consideration as a potential at-large team, despite having one more win in the regular season than those 9-3 teams in the SEC who had, really good losses to Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, and Kentucky, as we were discussing. I think South Carolina got trounced by Ole Miss too, so that would have been really fun to debate and such. But they already have every advantage that you are seeking in college football. You want to be a recognizable brand. You want to be able to recruit.
First round playoff. You're going to miss the first round playoff. That's the only advantage I can see not being there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a guarantee that you would miss it, but if you're one of those, if you're a Big Ten conference,
the bye. I mean,
if you're a Big Ten conference champion, there is a 99% chance that you are going to get a bye. I mean, obviously we saw the ACC champ not get a bye this year because Boise State was in the mix. However, could that happen to the Big Ten or the SEC champion? I cannot see that. I cannot see that happening. But of course, as Oregon apparently taught us this year, it'd be cool to just not win the conference championship and play a home playoff game, because apparently that's format. Now, we have 1 year of information on it, so let's pump the brakes before we make those, wide-ranging conclusions that this is how it is. Like, this is how it was this year. If it does again next, if bye teams go 0-4 again next year and they are 0-8, this sport will have to completely reassess. How it, and they will, right? Because the report from ESPN's Heather Dinich, who I think generally does a pretty good job and has been pretty darn accurate on a lot of stuff in this realm, they're not going to change the playoff format for 2025. Now, that's a problem, but that creates a problem for 1 year, right? Which is the problem we saw this year of, hey, in retrospect, Oregon would have been better off losing the Big Ten championship game. Well, that's not what the conferences really want, right? They want to keep the importance of those Big Ten championship games because it's a big revenue component. And frankly, I'm okay with, and I understand that. Now, maybe we should go back to a time where you don't have conference championship games and you have, some first round playoff structure, the top four, and you're like, there are a lot of different options you go down. But I think we can agree the conference championship games are here to stay, but they wanted to maximize those importance. And instead, and Joel Klatt has correctly pointed this out, and the three of us collectively were just so right about what would happen in the Big 12 before this season kicked off. Gosh, we were good. But what he has pointed out is you tried to maximize it, but instead you have actually minimized it in some sense. I mean, was Texas worse off getting a home playoff game against the lowest ranked team in the field and then playing the Big 12 champion? Or was Georgia better off having to wait 3 weeks before they played and then getting a team who was suddenly humming with a win at their back after a home playoff game? So that conversation gets very complicated. I think the flip side of the coin for Notre Dame is, hey, how many times are we going to win the Big Ten in the next 5 years? Once, maybe? I mean, like, legitimate question, not because they're not a great program. So if you're not winning the Big Ten or the SEC, but you're in those conferences, then you do wind up as Penn State or Texas. You get a home playoff game and you don't have to have a super long layoff. But again, it's 1 year of information, so let's wait and see a little bit longer.
Or you can come to the Big 12 and win the league 4 out of 5 years. Come on, Marcus Freeman.
You could.
Hear me out. Come on. Coming up, NBC and Notre Dame have proven that they can carry college football, the product itself, at least. NBC can. Fox has done a pretty good job. TNT in the mix now. Is ESPN's control of college football diminishing? This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Tonight, 8-point favorites, the Ohio State Buckeyes, and in the first time ever that I think I've said this, will take Notre Dame in the postseason to cover the 8. The first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the playoffs in college football or the NFL so much more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate. The variety of bets keep everything exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for the winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to playoff season, FanDuel has you covered. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. Get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. That's Spencer McLaughlin of Locked On College Football. NBC and Notre Dame, that network carrying the Irish has been a stalwart in college football recently. You turn on NBC on a Saturday night, Notre Dame is playing. CBS has taken a step back without the SEC, but Fox has taken a step up in the last few years. They're big noon. You can turn on a noon game with Ohio State of Michigan. And now TNT in the mix with the Big 12.
Yeah, I love Ohio State, Maryland.
Hey, big noon kickoff, Joel Klatt. Or Colorado, they're on there too. Are schools like Notre Dame, leagues like the Big 12 now signing with TNT, proving that ESPN's stronghold over college football is somehow loosening?
When did ESPN have a massive stronghold over college football? One of the most iconic one of the most iconic sounds or memories I have growing up as a college football fan is tuning into the SEC Game of the Week on CBS with Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson on the call, and Vern Lundquist before Brad Nessler, both phenomenal play-by-play announcers, might I add. But I mean, I think ESPN's always been a part of it. They're going to continue being a part of it, but I don't think the dominance that you're referring to has always been there. Notre Dame has always had a contract with ESPN. Fox has always had big college football games, and CBS has always had a major conference to broadcast games for. So, yeah, what was your question?
A perceived notion that ESPN taking control of the SEC, replacing CBS. This year they made the entire pomp and circumstance around it of, oh, look, special score bug for our friends, the SEC. And then on Tuesday nights, you turn on, same as the BCS.
Well, they do a special score bug for the college football playoff as well.
And the SEC and the college football, the biggest tournament you could draw up in college football, and our favorite conference, the SEC.
Well, they did something. Well, they did something because they have a new contract. Like the ESPN being a rights holder for the SEC and then rolling out a new score bug for that new contract. I don't think that's demonstrative of them showing favoritism towards the SEC. You don't have to convince me that there have been elements of that media-wise this year where that has taken place. I just don't think that's the best example.
I think so. I do believe the separation of, you're watching a normal Big 12 game, you're watching a normal one of these random ACC games, or you're watching the SEC because it's on ABC at these 3 time slots over the course of the day, and those are all SEC games, certainly sets apart that conference in ESPN's eyes. And again, they're carrying every Tuesday. You turn it on, ESPN as the complete stronghold over the college football playoff. Like this year, they wanted you to know they're the ones that control college football. That they have taken over.
They've always wanted you to know that. They've always done promos for the playoffs. Pate has railed against that for many, many years. That you're watching a bowl game, whichever one it may be, and they're talking about the playoff at halftime, and they're discussing promos for the college football playoff during the game. And his point is like, why is this not about the game that is right in front of you? I don't care if it's the Gasparilla Bowl or the Fiesta Bowl before it was a playoff game. Like, it's just they've always done that. But also promotion for a network's own programming is not a brand new concept that began once the SEC got in bed with ESPN. Like that's just something that media entities have done for a very long time.
So if the question is, from Notre Dame and NBC to TNT's involvement here, CBS and the other networks, Fox, if the question is, Can they dethrone ESPN as having control of college football? Your response is ESPN doesn't have control of college football.
I don't think I've never gotten the sense that they have complete and total control of college football. They've never been the only broadcast partner. Yeah, they have the college football playoff, which they also sublet to, Turner for the first round games. But again, they have the rights to it and control it, and that's all good and fine. I think they're a major player in the space, but to say that, they're the dominant power and they have a lot of influence. Yes, but I don't think they have 90% of it or 80% of it. I think they have, a plurality. I'm not going to do the percentages off the top of my head, but I know that it's not, so big and powerful that there are no other pregame shows, that there are no other channels where we watch college football, that there are only big games on ESPN. They have the rights to the playoff. Okay. But college football has always been about more than just its playoff structure. And the regular season still has a great deal of importance, even though it's been lessened with the 12-team playoff. And that is spread across a variety of networks. I mean, the CW broadcasts some games. And
Tom Brenneman.
All right. Yeah. So anyway, that's the point I have. Is like, yes, I've watched game day every Saturday morning since I was 5 years old. Like that's something I've always done. There's a nostalgic element to it, but to say that ESPN is, some overarching bully, they're a big player, but they're not the only player.
So with the SEC and the college football playoff, they've had the college football playoff. Now it's 12 teams. There's so much more to it, obviously. And they've treated the SEC as this golden child, as you do, right? If I buy stock in something, I want that stock to excel. Conversely, if I'm also hosting a podcast or a TV show directly about all stocks, I'm going to promote the stock that I have the most invested in. No, an example would be in college football, you spend more time talking about probably Ohio State than you do Boston College by virtue of where they are as players in college football. So has that fostered in the last year, after what we saw this college football season, a more toxic viewer environment when turning on ESPN or viewing college football?
Now we're getting somewhere, because I completely agree with that there have been several elements this year in which major media or ESPN media personalities that cover college football have spoken about the sport in a way that is just disrespectful to a large swath of the college football fans out there. That I am 100% on board with. Kirk Herbstreit going out. I've watched and liked and respected Kirk Herbstreit for a long time. I've never met him before, but he is somebody who I have always enjoyed having as an ambassador and voice for the sport. For him to go out and rail against Indiana in the immediate aftermath of Tennessee getting blown into the stratosphere and beyond, they got blown into the interstellar fifth dimension where McConaughey is stuck in that whatever, banging on the window, begging himself to not leave his daughter. That's where Tennessee got beat into. And it was really, really quick. For him to then bring it back to Indiana was so bizarre. I mean, I felt like I didn't even know how to react. It was like there was too much sensory overload in my head watching and going, I'm like, wait, whoa. How are you sitting here crapping on Indiana when the SEC team in front of you just got beat badly as well? It turns out that it happens. This is not a point to say Tennessee shouldn't have been in the playoff or Tennessee wasn't any good. I said many times in my show, I thought they were. The defense was very good. Ohio State was just better. Ohio State was just better than Oregon. They did not deserve to be there. That's how football playoff games go sometimes. We don't think about it as much in other sports because we're playing a series, right? In the NBA playoffs, you have a 7-game series. So when one team blows out the other in a home game, you go, well, it's one game, and you don't remember. You just remember the outcome of the series. But in football, it's one game. It's one and done. It doesn't mean they didn't deserve to be there or that they weren't good enough. Virginia lost to a 16 seed, and then mostly the same guys went on the court next year and won the national championship. It doesn't mean they weren't good enough. It just means they weren't good enough on that particular day.
Yes, and great point on Tennessee getting blown into the interstellar fifth dimension. Doesn't sound that terrible to me. Spencer McLaughlin, where can people find more of your work?
I am on YouTube with Locked On College Football and Locked On Ducks as well. It's also on podcast platforms. Wherever you listen to or watch this particular program, it is over there Monday through Friday, all year round. Biggest stories in college football, everything about Oregon. It's all over there. And then I pop into this show and pretend like my brain hasn't rotted talking to Drake for the last 30 minutes.
And find Spencer on TikTok at... Oh, wait a second.
I don't know. It might come back. I heard there might be an executive order to bring it back. That was the report.
I'll probably do a show on that, too. And it always will be.
Why not?
Back tomorrow, we'll recap the national championship through the Big 12's perspective. Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Dose Grande.